I too, as a secondary teacher in the past, share a huge amount of the reservations about the Teaching Council. It was set up in 2001 for professional standards, as the professional standards body for teaching, and to promote and regulate the profession of teaching. What has it actually done to defend teachers? What has it actually done to take on some of the key questions facing teachers? And I'd argue it's done very little. The view of teachers on the ground, as the previous speaker said, is that it's a quango, that they do not understand why they had to pay €90 up until last year to click a button on a computer to renew your teaching certificate. Certainly, yes, the first time you register, anyone can understand that you must pay a fee for the processing and checking out of all of the requirements. But every year, to pay €90 to the Teaching Council was completely wrong. And suddenly, after many complaints, they were able to reduce it to €60 last year. So why weren't they able to do that in the previous years? I have to say, the biggest crisis in teaching right now, Minister, and I'd ask if you'd agree with this, is not poor-performing teachers. It's the fact that 1 in 4 secondary teachers in this country doesn't have a permanent job, doesn't have full teaching hours, and half of them are having to work in Lidl and McDonald's at the weekend. And this has been told to you and the Teaching Council for a whole number of years. Compare the figures for Ireland. In second-level schools, only 73% have a permanent position, compared to 90% in Norway. For under 30s, it's much worse. Only 52% have a year or less of a contract. That's more than half of the teachers in secondary schools under 30. It was reported in the Examiner when Ruth Quinn was Minister at the teachers' conferences that a whole number of teachers were going to Lidl, filling stations, to McDonald's to supplement their incomes to survive. And what has been done about this? Certainly nothing by the Teaching Council. You go onto the website, you won't see a mention of it. But now here they are, seemingly more concerned with sacking teachers than actually defending teaching. And I know that this bill is not known. I rung a number of teachers today to see, I checked the union websites. There's no discussion or mention of it. People don't know about it. And I would like to deal with some of the issues that it brings up. Fitness to practice learnings to be made public, and an expansion of the grounds for a teacher to be hauled in front of one of these investigating committees. Why? Can you justify and explain why something like that has to be done in public? Is it to feed the tabloid media and an anti-teacher sentiment that's clearly out there? Is it to detract attention from the serious cuts that have taken place in education, the pressures teachers are under? I think it is. Because, yes, I know other professions, I disagree with it. And I'll give you an example of why. Why is it beneficial that somebody who's medically unfit to teach will be hauled up in front of a public investigation? Something like that, I don't think, is beneficial to somebody in that position. If somebody is clearly medically unfit to teach, that can be dealt with by a body. I don't think that the media has to be there outside to cover it. In Britain, for example, there was a doctor in the UK suffering from depression, and it was deemed he was a suicide risk if he was called in front of one of these public hearings. He asked to voluntarily withdraw his own name from the medical register, and the Medical Council refused. They said, no, we must carry things out in public. Why is that beneficial? Are there any public hearings of bankers? Most employees in this country, there's internal investigative procedures. In the banking sector, in the insurance sector, and so on. It only seems to really apply to doctors, nurses, and now teachers, who are already, under a lot of stress and strain. And look, this has nothing to do with child welfare. Nobody is saying that anyone who's a danger to children should be teaching and shouldn't be in front of an investigation committee. I'd actually ask, though, how effective is vetting? I mean, is it likely that you're going to find a whole load of paedophiles or people who are in danger to children by the vetting procedures that we currently have? No, it isn't. But it isn't a key problem in teaching. There's no evidence that it's a major problem. What this seems to be about is making a public show trials of teachers who the tabloid media and many in this government would like to convince the public that there's a serious crisis of underperforming teachers. But in actual fact, if you look at the literacy and numeracy qualifications that have been attained in recent years, despite the gutting of education, despite all of the cuts, despite the loss of SNAs and teachers and resource teaching, English, backup teaching, actually the standards have increased. And I think that that's because teachers have taken on board a whole lot of evidence from other countries, a lot more team teaching, a lot more focus on key things that I saw when I was teaching in a disadvantaged JESH area, where huge strides were made, and a constant update of teaching methods. Look, Minister, there's enough things. What would drive-by inspections that have been enforced? What other profession has drive-by inspections? Where at any moment an inspector could come in, you're having a bad day, you've got a cold, you're dealing with discipline issues in the school, etc. An inspector comes in on top of it. And now you want to have show trials, public hearings, and the grounds I would challenge are nothing to do with child welfare. The grounds that you're adding to with this amendment is poor professional performance. Again, that wouldn't be a child welfare issue. Conduct contrary to the Code of Professional Conduct. And obviously, if someone has a conviction in the state or an indictable offence which would constitute that's not an issue. Obviously, that person is going to be disciplined and may lose their job. But I just think that this seems to be feeding into an anti-teacher sentiment which the government would like to increase right now, taking on as it is the ASTI and the TUI in major strikes, who are defending their right not to give state accreditation to their own students. And it seems to be quite convenient that you're bringing this forward at a time. What are you doing about the 1 in 4, more than 1 in 4 secondary teachers who have to work in other jobs to try to keep a roof over their heads? You're doing absolutely nothing. You're not increasing their wages. And the NQTs, I'd love to see what the Teaching Council has done to keep casualisation out of teaching and to defend the profession of teaching. And I'm very disappointed, and I hope that the unions that are involved in the Teaching Council rear up about this.
Thank you very much.